Hello everybody, my name is Jennifer Duff. Everybody calls me Jen. It's a lot easier. But this afternoon I am going to read for you one of my favorite books called Puss in Boots. Do you know this? I love cats, so I love to tell the story about this very famous cat. So Puss in Boots has lots of wonderful pictures. But we're going to start at the very beginning. A miller had 3 sons, and when he died, he left them nothing but his mill, his donkey, and his cat. The sons didn't send for a lawyer because they knew their whole legacy would have gone for fees. But it didn't take long for them to decide who got what. The eldest got the mill, the second got the donkey, and nothing was left for the youngest but the cat. He wasn't very happy about it. My brothers will be able to work together and make a decent living, he said. But once I've eaten my cat, made a muff out of the fur, I'm sure to starve. Oh my. Who would do that to a cat? The cat, who had been listening, while pretending not to, said with a serious, sympathetic look, "Don't worry, master. Just get me a sack and a pair of boots to carry me through the brambles, and you'll see that I haven't come out as badly as you think." The cat's master was not exactly convinced. But then he remembered that he had seen the cat do some very clever things, such as catching rats and mice by hanging his paws or hiding in the flour and playing dead. So he said to himself, "Oh well, why not give it a try?" When Puss had got what he had asked for, he pulled on his fine boots. He threw the sack over his shoulder, and holding the strings between his 4 paws, he went out to a warren where there would be lots of rabbits. He put the bran and the sow thistle in the sack and waited for a young rabbit who hadn't caught on to these ruses of this world to poke his nose into the sack. There's the bunny, and there's the sack, and there's Puss in Boots, the cat with the boots, tricking the rabbit. No sooner that he had settled himself than a harebrained young rabbit walked right in. Puss pulled the string tight and killed the rabbit without mercy or compassion. Oh my. Proud of his kill, he went straight to the royal palace and asked to see the king. They showed him into His Majesty's apartments, where he bowed low and he said, "Sire, I brought you a wild rabbit, which the Marquis of Carabas," that was the name that Puss decided to give his master, "had bidden me offer you with his compliments." "Tell your master," said the king, "that his gift has given me great pleasure and that I thank him kindly." The next time Puss went out with his sack, he hid in a wheat field. When 2 partridges walked into the sack, he pulled the strings and caught them both. The king accepted the 2 partridges gladly and told his servants to reward the cat for his pains. So there's my cat right now. Hi, Miko. This is my cat, Miko. He would look nice in a pair of boots. For 2 or 3 months, Puss went on to bringing the king game from his master's preserve. So there's Puss in Boots presenting the rabbit to the king. So he went on about this for a few months. Then one day, when he knew the king would be going for a long ride along the river with his daughter, who was the most beautiful princess in the whole world, Puss said to his master, "Do as I say, and your fortune is made. Just go for a swim in the river. I'll show you the exact spot and leave the rest to me. This is a very clever cat. So the Marquis of Carabas, which is his master, followed Puss's instructions to the letter, though he couldn't imagine what it would do him. While he was swimming, the king passed by, and Puss shouted with all his might, "Help! Help! Help! Marquis of Carabas is drowning!" There's Puss in Boots calling for help, and there's his master drowning there. You can see his toes, and the king is in the carriage. Hearing the shouts, the king stuck his head out of the carriage door and recognized the cat who had brought him so much game. Remember the rabbits? The king remembered that. And the king said, "Hurry!" He called out to his guards, "Hurry to the rescue of Marquis of Carabas." While the poor Marquis was being pulled out of the river, Puss went over to the carriage and spoke to the king. "While my master was swimming," he said, some thieves came and made off with his clothes. Even though I yelled, 'Stop, thief!' at the very top of my voice, the rascal had hidden them under a stone." So his master didn't have any clothes. So the king ordered the officers of the wardrobe to fetch one of the finest suits for the Marquis of Carabas. Once the Marquis had changed, the king made a great fuss over him and said, "Since the fine clothes brought you out his good looks." The king's daughter took a liking to him. So he's all in his fancy clothes, and the king's daughter, the princess, is right here. And she's like, "Oh, The Marquis gave her 2 or 3 tender glances, and before you knew it, she had fallen in love with him. The king proposed that he join them in the carriage for a drive. So now he gets a ride in the carriage. Delighted that his plan was turning out so well, Puss went on ahead. When he saw some peasants mowing a meadow, he said to them, "Friends," here's the peasants, "friends, I want you to tell the king that his meadow belongs to the master of Carabas. If you don't, you'll be cut up as small as sausage meat." Boy, that cat is very clever, saying things like that. When the king came along, he asked the mowers who owned the meadow that they were mowing. Puss's threat had scared them out of their wits, and they answered in unison, "The Marquis of Carabas owns it." "A fine meadow you've got there," said the king to the Marquis. "Yes, indeed, sire," said the Marquis. "Year in, year out, it yields a goodly crop." Puss, who was still going on ahead, saw some harvesters, and he said to them, "I want you to say that all of this wheat belonged to the Marquis of Carabas, and if you don't, you'll be cut up into sausage meat." The king, who came along in a few moments later, wanted to know who owned all the wheat he was looking at. "The Marquis of Carabas," said the harvesters, and again the king was so well pleased with the Marquis. Puss was going on ahead of the carriage, kept saying the same thing to all the people he met, and the king reveled at the size of the Marquis's estates. Now it appears the Marquis owns all this land and all this harvest. So at last Puss came to a beautiful castle that belonged to an ogre. He was the richest ogre in the world, for all the lands the king had passed through belonged to this ogre. He went through the castle and asked to call on him. "What a pity it would be," he said, "to be so near his castle and not pay my respects." The ogre welcomed him affably as the ogre can and bade him to be seated. "I've been told," said Puss, "that you can turn yourself into any animal you please. A lion, for instance, or even an elephant." "That is true," said the ogre, "and to prove it, I'll turn myself into a lion." There's the ogre, and there's Puss, trying to trick the ogre. And the ogre turned himself into a lion. See the big lion? Puss was so terrified at seeing a lion. Look at him, he looked so scared. Right there in the room that he scrambled up on the roof, which wasn't easy because the boots were no good for walking on tiles, and it was dangerous besides. A little later, when Puss saw that the ogre was an ogre again, he came down and admitted that the lion had given him a bad scare. So now the ogre's an ogre again, not a lion. So then Puss thought about it, and when he caught his breath, Puss said, "I hear you can turn yourself into small animals too, a rat or a mouse, for instance. That seems impossible." "It seems impossible, does it?" said the ogre. A second later, that ogre was gone, and a mouse was scurrying across the floor. Puss pounced and caught him and gobbled up the mouse, gobbled up the ogre. Oh my. So, just then the king came to this beautiful castle, and of course he wanted to go in. When Puss heard the sound of the carriage rumbling over the drawbridge, he ran out to meet the king. "Welcome, your majesty," he said, "to the Marquis of Carabas's castle." It was no longer the ogre's castle, it was the Marquis of Carabas's castle. "My dear Marquis," cried the king, "is it possible that this castle is yours too? Would it be more beautiful than this courtyard and all these buildings around it? Let's have a good look inside." The Marquis gave the young princess his hand, the king led the way, and all went in. In the great hall, they found a banquet that the ogre had ordered for his friends. These friends had just arrived, but when they saw the king's carriage, they ran away. The king was charmed by the Marquis's manners and estates, and the king's daughter had favored him from the first. So after 5 or 6 beakers of wine, the king said to him, "You have only to say the word, my dear Marquis, and I'll take you for my son-in-law." The Marquis said the word with a low, elaborate bow and married the princess that same day. Oh my. So there's a Marquis of Carabas and the princess and all the people toasting to their marriage. Puss became a great lord and gave up chasing mice, except just once in a while for the fun of it. So Puss in Boots was a very clever cat. I hope you enjoyed the story of Puss in Boots. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing the story.